Hi guys. Hello there. Sorry to keep you waiting, Yusuf, and others, I'm sure. So some technical challenges there. But anyway, I just wanted to wish you all a good morning and a happy Monday, and answer a few questions. So I'm happy to take some questions from people. I'll be talking just very briefly about the plans for tomorrow. So the immigration announcements are due for tomorrow. There is a confirmation hearing that was delayed from this evening till tomorrow because of a storm. There's a very heavy storm on the East Coast. And so that storm has delayed the confirmation hearing of Mayorkas, who is the Department of Homeland Security chief. And that's very essential to talk about a particular task force that President Biden is forming to reunite the children that were separated from their families at the Mexican border. This was a very big deal that really resonated with a lot of people about what the Trump administration had done. So this is a very important topic that that Biden is looking to correct. And hence why he's leading up he's announcing a task force tomorrow. But I think also his wife, Jill Biden, the First Lady, is going to be connected to that task force. So it's an important issue close to their hearts, and it goes beyond a few hundred children, although that's bad enough. But it just goes to the way that immigrants are being treated at the southern border and in general. So. It's an important thing that that Biden is working on that. But because of that confirmation hearing, the confirmation hearing of Mayorkas being delayed from last Friday, from last week rather, is why the immigration announcements were delayed. And so I did have a concern that when that was also cancelled from tonight's plan, that the immigration plans tomorrow would be cancelled. But actually, Jen Psaki, the press secretary, said just a few minutes ago that they still plan and hope to have the same schedule for tomorrow for the immigration announcements. And there will be some details available about what immigration orders they plan to take tomorrow. That's going to be available later on this evening. So I expect to see some reporting on that tonight, which will be pretty firm reporting. Up to now, we're just speculating that that the 10014 and 10052 will be removed tomorrow. So tonight we should hear that confirmed with a bit of luck. Okay, so what are the plans for 10014? I just talked about that, so hopefully that's answered your question. Yeah, same question there. Everyone's going to ask the same question. Okay, if it's removed tomorrow, will you be able to travel immediately? It depends where you're coming from, Kerry. If you're coming from one of the Schengen type ban areas, so this is Schengen area, UK, Ireland, Brazil, and so on, South Africa just recently added, then no, you can't travel into the USA tomorrow if 10014 is removed. You would still have that 14-day quarantine period to serve in some third country. So you need to be aware of that and plan if that's the case. Now, be very careful to not even travel through the Schengen area, right? So if you're in Africa, let's say, and a normal flight would take you through Paris or through London or something like that, that is bad enough to cause the 14-day quarantine, for your travel plans. So don't even travel through one of the banned areas. Be very careful how you arrange your travel. Okay. All right. So let's see. This time around we'll win. Yep. Let's hope so too. My uncle considers applying for sponsorship visa for my mum. How long do you think it would take to process? No idea. No idea. I only answer DV lottery questions, so I apologize. Please, with the president pushing for the number of lottery winners to be increased, will it have an influence on those of us who applied in October last year? No, it won't. Biden's suggestion to increase the number of lottery winners to 80,000 from the current 55,000 is a suggestion in his overall immigration plan. It does not mean it will be immediately effective on DV2021 or DV2022. It may be effective on DV 2023 if passed. But right now, it's just a suggestion. It's not a law. When the president says something, it's not passed into law. He's suggesting something that should be discussed as a part of new law. Okay, so no, it won't affect DV 2022, which is the year for the people that applied in October of last year. Okay. Do you think they will at least consider AOS cases if embassies are closed? That way, people are already in USA. Yep, there's been no blockage on AOS cases. You should already know that. The question is whether you're current or not. You can't just apply for your adjustment of status until your case is current, right? According to the visa bulletin. And actually, when you see it on the visa bulletin, let's say the visa bulletin we just saw was the February visa bulletin, which talks about numbers that will be current in March. As soon as your number is published in the February visa bulletin, which is published in January, then you can submit your I-485 package, but not before that. That is considered early processing or early filing for the I-485. It is possible to do that. It gains you an extra 6 weeks or so, 6 or 7 weeks. So you can do that, but you can't do it before you've actually seen your number as being current. Okay. I talked about that one. Hello to all of you that are kindly saying hello. I appreciate that. And of course, there's tons of messages. Okay. Is there any chance that DV 2021 AF36K from Egypt? Okay, so I'm going to get this question a ton of times today, I'm sure. So let me answer this question and I'll just refer to this answer for everybody else. I can't predict any numbers this year, none, right? Why can't I? Well, mostly because we haven't even seen any cases being scheduled for interview yet. Most likely we're going to see cases scheduled for April at the earliest. And it will only be for the embassies that can be opened by then, right? So it's a completely unpredictable year. I can't predict where the numbers will end up for any region. Okay, now there has always been a risk for high case numbers. People are aware of that, but because we have less time, and I don't know how much less time we have, but we have less time this year, there is a risk for medium to high case numbers as well. Not just the high case numbers, but also medium. An AF36K from Egypt, that's probably what you would say is a medium number. And so there is some risk. And as we lose more time, there'll be more risk for more people. That's literally the reality. Now, I'm sure somebody is saying, why is Brit Simon being negative? Well, it's not about being negative, it's about being realistic, right? I'm an optimistic realist, I think somebody has described me as. So that's what you have to understand. And the lawyers will try and fight for more time, I'm quite sure of that, but that's by no means certain that we can get that more time. Okay, so you have to wait and see. So there you go. This Wadi is an important point as well. If PP10014 is removed tomorrow, does that mean that DV 2021 interviews can automatically just start? Well, not necessarily. Many of the embassies are completely closed right now, and some are partially open. The ones that are partially open are not doing DV lottery cases in terms of interviews. They have a certain sort of open status, and during the status, depending on the level of opening where they are, they may not consider DV lottery cases. So I believe we're probably still going to need, at least for some of the embassies, a judge's order, probably Judge Siebel, most likely in the Enunciato case. We'll need an order from the judge to say to the government, okay, now we're instructing you to treat these cases, DV lottery, as mission critical cases. I've spoken to the lawyers about this, I've said that to them. I'm not sure they entirely agree with me, based on some comments that I think Jeff Joseph said. And it may be that we're just arguing over the terminology about mission critical. My point is, I want that we're time sensitive. Some cases are not time sensitive, but we are time sensitive. We have until September 30th in DV lottery world. And so I want the government to be instructed to say you have to deal with these cases. You have to adjudicate these cases in DV lottery, and if that needs them to be treated as mission critical, then so be it. Instruct that, right? And so I'm looking for the judge to make that sort of order in the Annunziato case. Now, we're close to a decision from Judge Seaboard on that. He held off making a decision, I believe, because of the announcements expected on PP 10014. He didn't want to block 10014 when the government was about to remove it, as was suspected. But he may need to be asked, and the lawyers are very aware of this, he may need to be asked to intercede and make sure that interviews actually start for DV 2021, because we are already seeing tremendous impact to DV 2021. We've probably only got 6 months of interviews, and 6 months is not enough time to issue all 55,000 visas. It just isn't. I've explained that before. How many hours from now do you expect this immigration plan report to be announced? Around about 30 hours from now, probably. There are rumors. No, he's not going to remove the Schengen area ban. I've already explained that. He's not going to remove that because there are no other measures in place. And it takes time to put proper measures in place. So the Schengen ban and similar bans from South Africa, etc., are there because of the lack of processes that Trump should have implemented, frankly, to have screening, proper screening at the airport, or proper quarantine in the USA. And so the lack of all of those plans, the lack of proper screening, the lack of testing requirements and everything else, and the lack of a quarantine critically in the USA means that our answer is to get you to quarantine in some third country. Now that's bullshit, frankly. It's no safer in Mexico than it is in, in America, right? It doesn't mean that you're safe. I hope people who are in that position are being safe, but it doesn't mean you're safe because you've been in Mexico for 2 weeks. And so I would rather see a quarantine, if it needs to be imposed in the USA. But it takes time to implement those procedures. And until those procedures are in place and working, which takes weeks, not days, then the Schengen bans and similar bans will stay in place. Okay. DV 2020, there are two types of people in DV 2020. Those who have the visas already issued, those people are generally going to be happy tomorrow when the 10014 is removed. That's the thing that's blocking them using those visas. DV 2020 cases that are waiting for an approval still and hoping on the Gomez case need to wait until the Gomez case wraps up, until it finalizes, which will be mid to late March and possibly early April before we see any movement in those cases. Okay. You're a 2021 winner, but due to travel restrictions, can I schedule my interview separately from spouse and children? Beckline, I think you've answered this before, but basically I would say no, don't do that. You need to travel to interview together. It adds a level of complexity to try and have your interview as the main selectee, let's say in one embassy, and another embassy go through, the interview for the family and children. And complexity is a bad thing with DV lottery. You try and reduce the risk of DV lottery processing, not increase it. And I understand that traveling is risky in itself, but there is no formal procedure for that type of interview. There is a procedure called the follow to join procedure. The form is I-824. And some people mistakenly think that that's for the scenario you're in, which is one embassy interviewing the main selectee and the other people being interviewed by another embassy. But it is not correct to use that I-824 process for that. That is follow to join, where someone has adjusted status in the USA and derivatives are outside of the country, and so they need an embassy interview in the country outside of the USA to be able to enter the USA. That's a different process, so don't rely on that process. And in general, just plan to interview together. Can I give my email address? Man, if I give my email address, I get swamped with emails of people that assume that I'm sitting here ready to answer emails. I have shared my email address with a few people in the past. I accept emails for questions that need, big stress on the word need to be asked in private. There's almost no questions that need to be asked in private. It's only when I'm asking you to provide me with some of your documents and that sort of thing, which reveal your personal identity. Other than that, you should be asking me questions through the blog. And the reason I do that is because number one, the questions are in a nice format. I can go through them. I can tell which ones I've missed, etc. And number two, when I answer a question for one person, other people can read the answer and they can benefit from that too. And that is tremendously useful to spread the information. So I might get, maybe I only get a couple of hundred questions a day, but I'm quite sure that that's helping thousands of people when they read those questions I've answered. And that's why I tend to not do that. If you are convinced that you need some sort of one-to-one personal help, I don't charge for anything. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not in this business. So I will, in exceptional circumstances, handle an email through email, or question through email at, I'll say this one time, britsimon3@gmail.com. But please, I will just ignore, I literally just ignore the emails from people that haven't listened to this warning, that I will, I don't answer questions that don't need to be answered in private. I have to just ignore them. I get too many questions, so I just ignore them. I do a full-time job. Okay. If it's removed tomorrow, will they start? I think I've talked about that. When do we expect 2NLs? Okay, so if they remove the order tomorrow, and let's say the embassies were working, then I would normally expect for 2NLs to be sent at the end of February, or the latter part of February, for April interviews. That would be the normal schedule, but I'm not sure that we'll see that. We have to figure out whether the embassies are going to take the cases or not. The procedure of transferring a DV2021 case because of relocation. Okay, so basically it's you have two embassies. Embassy A is where you're scheduled at once you've been scheduled by KCC, and nobody has been scheduled by KCC yet. So assuming that you've already been scheduled and you're trying to move your process to another embassy, Embassy A is where you were scheduled. You have to contact Embassy B and say, will you accept my case? If they say yes, you go back to Embassy A and you ask them to transfer the case to Embassy B. You need to communicate with both embassies, in other words. However, it's easier to move your case by asking KCC prior to them arranging the interview. They won't always do it, but there are some cases where you have to do that, and you can contact KCC and they will change your interview location. The interview location is always based on your home address, right? Doesn't matter which embassy you pick in the drop-down list, and many of you will have noticed that once you've picked that embassy, you can never change it again. Only KCC can change that embassy that is chosen for your interview. So, so you have to ask KCC to modify that embassy that's going to be assigned for you if they haven't already sent you to the embassy. Okay. What are the things we need to bring to America that is mandatory? When you get your approval from the embassy, they give you a brown envelope with some papers in it, and you get your passport with the visa. You need to hand over that brown envelope to the immigration officer as you go through the point of entry. Apart from that, what do you bring? You don't bring anything. There's no arrangements made for you. You bring what you decide to bring. Should you bring some cash? Yes, you should bring some cash or some ways to, to start actually, coming into the States. But you also need to put some common sense thought into it. Should you bring your resumes, your CVs, that sort of thing? Absolutely. Proof of work that you've done. You should travel with those things, of course, to make it easier for you to find a job. But generally speaking, everybody will make their own mind up about what they need to bring to the USA. Okay. Okay, talked about that. What happens about the 2017? Okay, I've been asked this question several times. People have asked me, so when the Muslim ban was revoked, the order that President Biden signed said that there could be a reopening of some cases and to consider whether they were incorrectly refused or not. Now, and people have assumed, therefore, that from the point that the Muslim ban was put in place in 2017, that we could go back to all those cases in DV2017, DV2018, DV2019, and we can't. And here's the reason why. Each year, the embassy, the visas need to be assigned by September 30th. Once that year is finished, you can't continue to issue visas on that year. So DV 2017, 2018, and 2019 are all closed. They can't be reopened for any reason, even though the Muslim ban was used to refuse a case in DV 2017 through 19. Only DV 2020 could have that sort of reopening of the case, and that's only because Judge Mehta reserved some visas, as we know, in the Gomez case for issuance later. So we will need Gomez case to complete and for Judge Mehta to say, yes, go ahead, issue those 9,000 visas, or hopefully more. And if he does, then some of those Muslim ban cases could be reopened and questions raised with the embassy. But you'll need to act very fast for that to happen. I'm saying it's technically possible. It's not going to be that likely. But to DV 17 through 19, it's not even technically possible. Okay, so I'm hoping you're hearing the same information from lawyers, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if some lawyers try and say, and I'm not talking about our normal lawyers, but some of the other lawyers say, you know, something contrary, because they want to sign people up into to pay the money, basically. And again, I'm not talking about the lawyers that, you know, the great, you know, Siskin, Joseph, Cook team, or Curtis Morrison, Raphael Arena team. Not talking about them. I'm talking about, you know, probably local lawyers in your own countries, etc., might sort of try and convince you that you can reopen these cases. The reality is, for DV 2017 through 2019, that won't work. Okay. Okay, Enger. When will the final judgment for DV 2020 Kennedy plaintiffs, not just for Kennedy, but everyone attached to the case? That'll be in March, mid-March is the final hearing. What's the chance of the 9K visas? We don't know. We'll have to wait and see how they're handled by either the lawsuit itself. The judge could specify some sort of order that gives Kennedy plaintiffs a bit more of a priority, or he may say no priority and leave it to the government. And if he does that, then they'll go either in case number order, or which cases are already at the embassy. You know, in other words, previously scheduled cases that were cancelled. Those would be the most likely cases to get served first. Okay. I think you already answered this one, Dr. D. Zaid says, can I use a private mailbox address like addresses? No, don't do that. The certain types of official mail, including the one from the government for the green card, are not supposed to be delivered to mailboxes. They need to be delivered to real addresses. So you're likely to screw the whole thing up, frankly. And if your green card gets lost and it's your fault because you gave a bad address, it'll cost you $500 to replace it. So find a real person you can trust to hold your green card and send it to you, and give that as the address. That should be the address that you put on your DS-260. The address on the DS-260, by the way, the USA address, is for that reason. It's not necessarily the place that you'll stay at, but it's the place that your green card will be sent. It doesn't mean it's the sponsor either. That's a totally different thing, but people confuse these points all the time. The address in the USA that you give in your DS-260 is where the green card will be sent, and that's it. That's the only aspect of that address. It may also be, depending on what plans you've made, where you're going to stay. It may be a family member who's going to help you, but that's not the point of the address in the DS-260. That's not why they asked. And so a financial sponsor, for example, could be at a totally different address, and it could be in a different state. Okay, so you're a D2021 EU 21,000. Do I have to send the military record for my husband with the documents, or only the main selectee? All adults. So yes, you would have to send your husband's military record, because that is required for each of the selectees and derivatives. And you know, we really need to. I was going nuts yesterday with people not reading instructions. It's very important you all understand you have to read the main instructions and the reciprocity pages for the countries where you're getting documents from. Okay, so so please make sure, if you're going to hear me say almost as commonly as wait and see, I say read the instructions. It's unforgivable to have an opportunity like this and then screw the whole thing up because you don't take some time to read the instructions. It's just stupid, right? Read the instructions is very important. Okay, so please make sure you do that. In your particular case, LHCAP, you could have worked that out from the instructions, but it's a slightly forgivable question because it's about the derivative, not the main selectee. But they do expect the military record for the derivative too. My expectations for embassies for DV interviews. I don't know what that question means. Okay, F2A. I don't know. I only answer DV lottery questions. Simon, I'm getting a sponsorship letter. When do I need to ask the person to fill in the sponsorship letter to me? After KCC asked me to submit the documents, or straight after us? No, neither one of those things. So, and you don't get a sponsorship letter. If you get sponsorship, you ask someone to fill out an I-134 for a DV lottery case. I'm talking specifically DV lottery. There's almost no other cases that use the I-134. But you get that when you receive your 2NL. So when you've been scheduled for an interview, you ask for that I-134, and the documentation that should support the I-134 is the W-2 or 1040. They're tax forms, they're income forms, recent pay slips if the person is employed. So depending on when you get interviewed, that's why you ask for that document late, just before the interview, because you want up-to-date pay slips. And then a photo ID. That's what you need from the sponsor. Oh, crikey, I'm way behind on questions here. Okay, I've probably missed some questions here, but if I was one of the countries that Trump imposed a Muslim ban, what do you think if I attend the interview in 2019? Yeah, I already talked about that. Unfortunately, you can't reopen it. Can't reopen the case from DV 2019. Is AS 5000 a low case number or medium? It's probably a low case number. It's close to being current. The lowest number in every region is case number 1. The highest number is whatever the case number is. So really use some common sense. If you know that Asia numbers go up to 35,000, Europe 5,000, use some common sense. You can see that that's in the low range, right? This question's answered a lot as well. Shaheen, any chance to save the lost 35,000 DV 2020 visas through lobbying in Congress? I don't know. If I had to guess, if I had to bet, I would say no. Lobbying is not a precise science. The lawyers are all trying their best, but I think a legal fix is what we need. I don't think a political fix is going to come. That if I had to guess, but I would be delighted to see myself being proven wrong on that. So let's hope so. Nizar, yep, exactly. I said that at the beginning of the call. Yep, that they still plan to move ahead with those announcements tomorrow. Julie, you met the DV. I saw this chat between you and somebody else in Cancun, and she's also moving to San Francisco. Talk about small world. I was pleased to see. I saw the two of you connect on Twitter. I was pleased to see that. I should probably mention also my wife, who is a much nicer person than me, and an extraordinarily good realtor. I was talking to her about your conversation. I was saying, look, there's these people coming to San Francisco. You probably will need to know, how to rent, rent property and that sort of thing. Maybe you need to know later how to buy property. Maybe you need to know how to establish credit history if you haven't already done that. But if you guys need help like that, I know the best realtor in the Bay Area, right? My wife is awesome. She's an extremely good realtor, and she's happy to answer questions. She shouldn't charge for her service. She only gets paid if you buy a house, not for renting houses or whatever. And she's paid by the owners of the house, not by the sellers. Sorry, not by the buyers. In other words, not you. So in other words, she's providing free services. It runs in the family. So, you know, by all means, Julie or anyone else that's moving to the San Francisco Bay Area, you know, if in that case, you know, contact me through Twitter or through my blog, and I'll put you in touch with my wife. As I say, she's a much nicer person than me, and a good realtor. Can we extend the visa that expires in March if the ban is not lifted? Yeah, so the ban will be lifted, right? It just will be. Trust me. I've been saying this for quite some time. I think on January 18th or 19th, I explained in my blog why I believed Biden was going to lift the ban. And then I'm seeing, I don't know how many notifications. You're obviously you're added me and Greg and Charles Cook, etc., to all these notifications on Twitter. And our Twitter notifications just blown up with all of you people, you know, sort of adding us to every one of these comments. I get it. But I've always been sure that Biden was going to remove 10014 because of the type of man he is, because of the decency he's got. He knows it's wrong. He said at the time that Trump did it, that it was a stupid distraction from real solutions for COVID. And it just wouldn't have been right for him to not remove it. So I've never been 100% certain, and I won't be 100% certain until I see it. But I've always been very confident, and I'm pleased to. I'll be pleased to be proven right tomorrow. Okay, a few more questions. We'll do a few more here. So you're in Vietnam. We're COVID-19 free for 1 year. Will they require quarantine for people coming from countries with 0 cases? How much will that cost just in case? It's a really good question. If they implement procedures, as I discussed earlier in the call, where everybody needs to be coming in, needs to be quarantined, then I think that you'll have to quarantine. You know, even though you come from a country where you know, where you have no COVID cases there. Why is that? Well, because you could have been sitting next to someone on the plane who is from a country where COVID cases do exist. You could catch COVID on the plane, right? And so the point of a quarantine in country is to say, okay, you might have been sitting next to someone as you were traveling, so therefore we're going to wait a few days. 10 days probably would be my guess. We're going to wait a few days before we let you move around in the population. And so even though you come from a COVID-free country, the quarantine would probably apply to you too. I'm from Georgia. It's not Schengen zone. What do I need to enter? Just normal stuff, as I talked earlier, Alex. You know, you need the brown envelope and your passport, and then whatever you're traveling with. Right. That's basically it. No, I talked about that one. So is it good news for DV2020? Yeah, it's good news. It's going to be good news tomorrow. Of course, it's going to be good. What documents? Everything you need is the passport and what's in the brown document. You don't have to, the brown envelope. You don't have to bring any other documents. It's just what they need is what they'll take from you in the brown envelope. They often give you back, by the way, they're not interested in the, if you were given the x-rays or a CD with x-rays, they're not interested in that. They often give you that back. You know, it's just something they don't really need at the border, but they'll take everything else that's in the brown packet. That brown envelope, by the way, it says on the outside, do not open. Don't open it. You must not open it. If you open it or it's damaged in some way, you have to go back to the embassy and ask them to reseal it. It's not your envelope to open, right? So it says on the outside, do not open. And unbelievably, every year somebody says, oh, I opened the brown envelope. So you're going back to the embassy then. I'm waiting for March release, so can I know more about my chance before release? I don't know how to answer that. You have to be clear and specific. Okay, and then so let's finish off. I said a moment ago it's going to be that the ban will be removed. There are going to be some cases, and this is quite right, some cases will already have expired, and the Annunziato case, in the Annunziato case, they're trying to figure that out. So they're trying to work out with the government, and I'm hopeful that they'll come to a resolution with the government. There seemed to be a change of attitude, I would say, on the Gomez case the other day from the government. You know, he seemed more cooperative, and I think Judge Seaborg, you know, definitely gets it. So I think there'll be something done for those cases where, you know, we got those cases reissued. Well, we got those cases, the September visas we got issued. People have said, what's the point? You know, I've had people say, why did they give us a visa that we can't use? Well, that's what we argued for. We did that deliberately, right? You know, we knew that that's what was going to happen, but we were clutching on to straws, fighting for you. So we got you visas that we knew at the time in September you wouldn't be able to use if the ban was extended, and there was a good possibility the ban was going to be extended. But we wanted to grab every opportunity and keep your cases alive, right? So I hope you've understood why we chose to force the government to issue the visas, even though the ban on entry, Judge Mehta said, was lawful, right? So we deliberately did what some of you have complained about. I'm sorry if you didn't understand that, but that's what we achieved, and thank God we did, because that's what's keeping your hopes alive. And now what we've got to do is get some of those cases reissued again. Okay, it's a pain, but in a few years' time, you'll forget about all the pain you went through for this period, and you'll be living in America, right? So in my reckoning, that's worth it. So I hope you agree. Will the ban on South Africa affect the scheduling of interviews at all by KCC, or does it just mean banned countries? This is also an interesting question, Camille. In the past, we had the government not processing cases because of the big bans, right? PP 10014. And in September 4th of last year, Judge Mehta told the government to process the cases subject to PP 10014. And then, immediately after they were told to do that, we had some embassies, such as Paris, for example, saying, well, yeah, but PP 10014 doesn't count for you Gomez plaintiffs, but it does count for, you're still blocked by PP 10014, so we're not going to issue your visas. And so we had to get Judge Mehta on September 14th to come back and say, no, that's bullshit. You need to issue those visas. And that's exactly what he did. He gave him another instruction. So we might have to do the same thing again for DV2021, folks. If the Schengen ban stops any embassies processing cases, which would be their normal way of operating, we might have to get Judge Seaborg to instruct the government to blow that theory away, right? So so it's an interesting point, Camille, and the lawyers will be looking at that very carefully. They'll be looking for evidence of that sort of behavior. Okay, and 5 different cases have successfully argued that behavior is incorrect. So the government keep doing what they've been told 5 times in 5 federal cases to not do. It's unbelievable, but they do that. So there you go. If we get a new medicals due to expire in March, do we need to pay the visa fee again? Yeah, this is the annoying thing about the reissuances. A reissuance requires you to redo the medicals and pay the fee again. I would prefer that they extend the visas by by some period of time, a month, 3 months or something, to make them valid again. But if you have to reissue the visas, then the fees, the $330 a person, and the medical fees are paid again, and it's expensive. But you know, that's how it is at the moment, unless the judge can direct them to do something different. And Judge Mehta was keenly aware of that particular point, by the way. I believe he knows that's a problem. All right, so talked about that. Hybrid, no, talked about that. Alice Rera, talked about that. Okay, let me scroll down a little bit. Okay, do they normally current all case number in the last visa bulletin? Nope. If not, my case number is not current, I cannot send my 485. Then we'll give chance to already use it. No. Okay, so the adjustment of status cases are controlled by the visa bulletin in the same way that consular processing cases are. It is not true to say that all cases, all years go current. That is not true. It's never been true. It's DV2014, DV2015 had limiting numbers on the last visa bulletin of the year, and we've seen it before. I mean, in the year I was in, DV2014, that was the case, and it happens when there are too many selectees chosen. How many are too many? Well, roughly speaking, the cutoff point to me seems to be about 100,000. When they select less than 100,000, there's a good chance that every region will go current. When they select more than 100,000, there's a good chance that every region won't go current, right? And we're at 134,000, I think, or 132,000 this year. And so even if we had a full 12 months to process, there would be a risk of not going current, and which would affect the highest case numbers. But now we only have 6 months of processing left at most. And so there is a serious concern that the visa bulletin won't move all the way to the end, or even as far as it should have moved without the COVID related issues. And that will affect adjustment of status cases too. Okay, so only time can tell. I can't predict exactly what will happen, and this year could be unusual to say the least. So we'll have to wait and see. But that's, if you want to understand how it works, what I'm telling you is how it works. What will happen, I can't predict. Okay. Why are this is a good question, Sammy. Why are 2NLs 2 months earlier? So they send in February for April schedules. Why do they do that? Well, there's a process that has to happen. They have to send the embassy the interviews and schedule those interviews. Then you have to go and see a doctor. The doctor in the country has to have time to schedule the appointments and produce the report. And there may be some pre-interview procedures going on at the embassy as well. So in general, that's what they tend to do. Now, could they break that sort of normal process in this case? It's possible. It's technically possible that they could go faster, that they could arrange March interviews in February, for example. It's technically possible, but I don't think it's likely. So that's my assumption. We'll have to wait and see. So I feel they'll start interviewing from May. So April is my earliest assumption. So February, if they take them out now, there's a chance we get some 2NL sent out in February. But I take your point; it could be even May. Okay. Flora, I know a person whose case number is DVAF 54,000. Doesn't submit DS260 because they got married. Is it bad? No, it's not late because we're not anywhere close to their number. In fact, they should probably hold back at the moment, even though originally I wouldn't have said that's a high case number. In this position, because of the delays, it could be too high, right? So they should actually hold back and maybe delay the submission of the DS260 even further. And they're going to get married on April. That's pretty late, right? So it is possible to submit in April, the DS260, but it's pushing it. So they should do that. Like if they're determined to get married as late as April, they should submit the DS260 the next day, literally the next day. I would personally, I would have brought them the wedding earlier. The envelope should be unopened. If you opened it, you should go to the, yep. Thank you, Dennis. That's what I said earlier. Do you think DV lottery rules need to be reconsidered? Immigration in general needs to be reconsidered. The rules, if you mean the law, it's hard to reconsider the law around DV lottery without reconsidering all immigration law or other aspects of it. It's not the most pressing problem to solve. So I think the one thing that, and in fact, I'm going to do a video on this over the next few days. The one thing that worries me at the moment is the recent implementation of the documents procedure. It's been implemented about 2 years now, and it's screwed things up badly. There's 2 departments at KCC. One answers the phone, the other one takes the documents from you. The one that takes the documents with a different email address never communicate to you or even to the other people in KCC, and it's caused a nightmare situation. So I need to explain apparently how to submit the documents, because I believe people are going to screw up their own cases through not submitting the documents correctly. And I partly blame KCC for that because they don't communicate well. But there is some part of that blame to be on your shoulders, the DV selectees. So if there's a part of the rules I would change, it would be that whole procedure about documents. I understand why they did it. I think it's a good thing that they did it, but they've implemented it very badly. In my job, I look at business procedures and implementation of business procedures, and I can see they've screwed that one up badly, and it's cost people their visas. I know it has. What about the 55,000 to 80,000? Yeah, that's going to be in later years, not this year. And it's not even a done deal yet. I talked about that earlier on this call. Does the CSPA apply automatically to my case, or should a form be filled? The protection offered to you, Ivan, because of the CSPA, doesn't need you to apply for it. It's just a part of the law that should apply to your case. The only thing is that the consular officer may not know how it applies to your case. I think you've probably asked me about this before, Ivan. But there is a document now, a web page that USCIS has about how the CSPA should be applied to a DV lottery case and other cases. So have a read of that. But no, you shouldn't have to. You don't have to ask for it. It's a right, that's given to cases. I respond to everyone when you explain. Yep. High or low case numbers doesn't depend on the country. No, it's to do with your region. Okay, go do a couple more questions here now, and then I'll have to call it a day. I get deported from USA after seeking asylum, now with a deportation ban, which is 10 years, and winning DV2021. Can the consulate discuss with me again? There's no real. So as long as if you picked up a 10-year bar, as long as that was more than 10 years ago, there's no impact to your DV lottery case now, as long as that bar is served. If the bar wasn't served, there'd be a different answer. But from what you're saying, that was long enough ago that it's already dealt with. We've got to upgrade your application. What does that mean? Oh, I don't know what that is, Si, but it sounds wrong. It sounds like, did you go through an agency or some sort of third party to make your application? There is no upgrade your application process. That doesn't exist. And if somebody's charged you money before or wants to charge you money now, then that's an indication that you're paying a broker or something for something you shouldn't be paying for. So there is no such thing as upgrade your application. Why is the court taking ages to pass the verdict? I'm from Kenya. So Batanga, the Judge Seaborg is holding off. If you're talking about DV2021, he's holding off because he was waiting to see what the Biden administration were going to do about 10014. If you're talking about Judge Mehta, it takes time. TROs are fast. A temporary restraining order, a TRO, is supposed to be an emergency process, and a preliminary injunction is the next level of speed. But the hearing process, the complete hearing process, and the legal system in the USA is not a quick process, because both sides have got the rights to argue the case how they see fit, and it takes time. So sorry, I know that means it strains your patience, but you have to just be patient. Okay. This question is, how far will the case numbers reach in 2021? The visa bulletin shows the snail's pace. The current pace today is irrelevant. What's important is where we get to. And you can't take the current pace and sort of extrapolate out and assume what that means for the year. You can't do that. It doesn't work that way. So, your questions are relevant. What you should be asking is, when are they going to start interviews? That's an important question. Last TV, I missed up and chose the wrong educational status. Would it fit? No, they don't care. You can choose anything as your educational status in the entry or even in the DS260, and it doesn't affect your case in any way. And it doesn't help you get picked. So don't deliberately lie. That would be stupid. But if you did make a genuine mistake, it's not going to affect your case. Okay. You've got to be honest when answering. Yeah. You have to be honest. Always be honest. When will DV2020 start? Renew the visa? I talked about that. If your passport lasts at least a year, you don't need to renew it now. You can renew it later, and you can always, you don't need to renew it that early. Navina. Okay. This one's interesting. Do you think KCC will start DV2021 reviews from the bottom list numbers, or they continue from the actual? When you say the bottom, you mean the highest case numbers or the lowest? I don't really understand, Yusuf, what you're asking, so perhaps you could clarify that. If you're married and your visa has a maiden and marriage name, but your passport and all other documents simply have your marriage name, how can you have your green card have only your marriage name? Well, you should. The DS260 you filled out should have had your correct legal name, which should have been your married name. And there you also have an opportunity to show your maiden name there. But if you manage to screw that up because you didn't do it right, then you can contact USCIS when you get into the country and ask them to change your name to the married name. It'll cost you some money, unfortunately, but but there you go. Beckline, you don't attend the interview on your own unless you're saying that your children and your spouse are going to come to the USA in years' time. If you want them to come a few months later, then they should attend the interview with you. If you don't get them to attend the interview with you, then it will take years to sponsor them. Okay, so be careful. Hello to Ghana. I've been saying hello to Ghana for many years. Okay. Okay, so this one is, how do you add a newborn baby? So I would submit your DS260 prior to the birth, but add the applicant later. Use the add applicant functionality later to add the baby once the baby's born. But you also need to unlock your own DS260. But you can, in order to speed things up a little bit, you can at least start the process by submitting your DS260 even prior to the baby's birth, and just add the baby's birth later on. Okay, PCC's gone past 6 months. Should I renew? You can renew, but bear in mind that police certificates are valid for up to 1 year at the interview. Okay, so you can, if you're concerned, renew it. If it doesn't cost a lot of money, renew it. But yeah, it lasts 1 year, even though the police certificate itself might say something like only good for 6 months. Robbie's asking, can't remember where you mentioned on DV2020, but passport will expire. Yeah, same thing. Take both passports. Yeah, exactly. So you take, if your passport needs renewing prior to the interview, you can take the old passport and the new passport. They obviously want to see the old passport because they want to see whether, particularly on 2021 cases, whether you entered the correct details at the time you entered the lottery, because that was a new rule this year. When will they open? 2022. Okay, so DV2022 selectees will be announced in May, and then there's going to be a new year, which will be DV2023, that'll start in October, every year. About to move. I generally, Robbie, I wouldn't. You don't need to update your DS260 every time you move address or change your job or minor things like that. no. You just need to make sure it's factually accurate in terms of the important things, but your address on the, you don't need to change that. I have a question, just got to the new university. No, I wouldn't do that. You just start a new university. That's not a big deal. You haven't done anything yet. If you just started a new university, that's all. You're just different university. Oh, I see. So once case numbers, I understand your question. Once case numbers, Maria, become current, they're all the same within that month. Is it fairer that they start with the lowest? Yes, in a way, but bear in mind that they slow the visa bulletin up to the point where they think they can still interview all of those people within a month. So generally, people shouldn't be impacted negatively through that, ideally. But that's why the visa bulletin is not moving fast, for that exact reason. Okay, you're presently pregnant during July. If your interview is before your baby is born, then there is no baby to discuss. You just wait until the baby is born. Once the baby is born, if you already have your visa, you enter the USA, and the baby will be processed at the airport. And there's various solutions depending on the timing, but there is always a way to add the baby. Okay, so I deal with that in my FAQ on my blog. So go to britsimonsays.com and you'll see the answers there. Okay. Okay, let's choose one more interesting question if I could find one. Oh, and here's, okay, so this is a DV2020. If Judge Mehta decides that interviews should continue according to case number, he's not going to get that specific. He's either going to say prioritization for these named plaintiffs, or he'll say nothing about prioritization, and he'll leave it to the government. He's not going to direct the government on how they prioritize, other than saying named plaintiffs goes first or not. He either will say that or, or not. And then up to what case number can cases go? I can't predict that. It really will be about what the judge says in terms of named plaintiffs, and if he doesn't direct on named plaintiffs, then it will be who was at the embassy, had an interview earlier but was cancelled. That's how it will go. Okay, everybody, I've gone over the time that I thought I was going to spend on this. I appreciate all of you joining with me today to hear about this. Tomorrow should be a good day. I'm very hopeful. Fingers crossed that we get PP 10014 removed tomorrow. Let's hope so. I'm sorry if I missed your question today, but I'll try and address some more questions in a couple of days' time. All right. Okay, everybody. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye now.